Hi everybody, this is Ryan from the Headwaters Science Center. If you watched the last snake feeding, you might remember that one of the snakes, Genie the ball python, had a little bit of shed skin that she wasn't getting off. And I mentioned that I might go through later and help her get rid of that. So that's what I'm going to be doing here today. This tub that I'm leaning on has Genie in it. I put her in here right before I started setting up the camera and all that, so she's been in here for a few minutes already. I'll crack it open. And hopefully we can see her. Here, and what you'll see is that Genie is in here, and what she's sitting on are some wet newspapers. Normally when I'm doing something like this, I would prefer to use like damp towels or rags, but we are out of them right now. We haven't been doing the laundry as much since the quarantine started, so I'm just using some wet newspapers instead. And Genie's been sitting in here for a little bit. Moisture tends to be one of the biggest things you need to worry about when you are one of the first things to check when your snakes are having issues with sheds. And moisture is an issue that we have here, especially since the quarantine has started and there's not as many people in the building. Our humidity levels have been way low. So it's not surprising that she's having a little bit of a difficulty shedding, considering her history as well. She's one who oftentimes struggles to shed. But just taking her out here, you can see she's got some old skin stuck to her back. Her sides and her belly are mostly clean, but it's just a little bit right down the middle of her back that she seems to be having a little bit of an issue with, and this is pretty common. That part of your snake tends to be the part that sees the least friction. Obviously when they're moving around, they're moving on their belly. When they're turning corners around stuff inside their tank, like Genie has her water dish in there and her hide that she rubs up against when she's shedding. And the back tends to be the part that gets missed, if any part's going to get missed. And it's pretty loose at this point. Generally, you don't necessarily want to help your snake shed. It's really easy to get overzealous when you're helping your snake shed. But in a situation like this, where it's been a few days, she's shed all the rest of it, and like I said, Genie has a history of difficulty shedding. I'm not too concerned about helping her shed with this one. And so what I'm going to be doing is just use the water that we have in the tub here to get my hands nice and damp. And then I'm just going to take her and I'm just going to kind of rub her on the back. And she doesn't always love it. They're not particularly known for being water lovers, ball pythons. But it's good for her. And you can see just one little quick rub there and I've already got all kinds of little pieces of skin on my back, or on my hand. And like I said, this is something that happens pretty regularly with Genie. Genie is a ball python, which is a type of snake that is native in sub-Saharan West Africa. And they're very popular as pets because they're really pretty. But they're actually snakes that tend to be pretty, at least compared to other pet snakes, pretty sedentary, pretty solitary. They don't always relish the contact and relish the interaction like some other species do. So, being as sedentary as ball pythons often are, I guess that's not surprising that she's the one here that pretty consistently has the most trouble shedding. She's also just a little bit older snake. We don't know her exact age. She's kind of I don't know if rescue is exactly the right word, but she's had a few owners before us. So we don't know her exact age, and some of the conditions she was living in before she was here weren't great. So, like I said, we don't know her exact age, but we've had her for almost 10 years now, and the previous owner had her for almost 10 years before that. So she's probably at least in her early 20s, I would guess. Which with ball pythons, you're generally talking of a lifespan, maybe 30 is the most you can realistically hope for. And what I'm using now is just a damp paper towel. Again, usually I'd like to use a cloth rag for something like this, but paper towel will do just fine. And what I'm trying to do is just get her back a little more moist than what it is. Like I said, she's been sitting in this water, but you obviously don't want to put too much water into the tub because you don't want her to be struggling to keep her head above the water. So it tends to, get her belly kind of wet and get her sides a little wet, but that's not the most pertinent issue here. We want to get her back nice and wet. That's kind of what I'm doing with this paper towel here, is just getting it a little damp and giving her back a soak so that skin will come off a little bit easier. And the reason snakes shed their skin is more often than not for growing. Snake skin does not grow with the snake, so whenever they're growing, they have to shed their old skin and grow a new one. So it's a little bit different than our skin, where we shed our skin, but we do it in kind of little pieces all the time. You know, most of the dust that you have around your house is shed skin. But with snakes, it all comes off in one big go when it comes off. The other context that you might see a snake shedding its skin is if they get some kind of injury. And this has happened with Genie before. You know, shortly after we got her, it's before my time, so I wasn't there for the exact story, but shortly after we got her, the heating pad in her tank had a malfunction and was getting very, very hot. And the end result is she got a pretty severe burn on her belly, and she apparently shed a bunch right after that. She just shed and shed and shed until that damage was done, or damage had gone away. And that's something we're seeing right now too with Artemis, the big boa. She got a burn from her light, and she's been shedding a bunch over the last few weeks to deal with that. You can actually see on her, if you look at her belly and know where to look, you can actually still see she has a little bit of a scar from where she got that burn. That doesn't seem to bother her too much. Like I said, that's probably almost 10 years ago now that happened. She's still going strong. That mechanism of shedding to heal also can make snakes kind of complicated from a veterinary perspective too. As you can imagine, if a snake, the way it heals is to shed its skin, if you imagine that a snake were to get a severe cut or a scrape or something, that presents some issues as far as putting stitches in the snake. And so that's something that's kind of a challenge, is if a snake gets a severe cut, what do you do about it? Because they'll just shed their stitches out before too long. So generally, if you have to do like surgery on a snake, you have to try really hard to be as uninvasive as possible. Create as small a wound as possible so you don't need to do stitches. And Genie just went to the bathroom. She just peed, which is something that ball pythons will do as a defense mechanism. She doesn't love that I'm doing this to her. She doesn't love being in the water. She doesn't love being wiped down like this. And so she's doing something that a lot of animals will do when they get threatened, humans included, is they'll go to the bathroom. And basically what she's doing is she's saying, I'm afraid that I might be eaten here. I think you might be a predator. So what I'm going to do is make myself really gross and smelly, and hopefully you'll leave me alone. And we're 80% of the way done here, getting that stuff off of her back. So I think I will actually leave her alone here. I'll just do one last quick pass on her back. I don't want her to strike at me. I've never known her to strike. I have seen her pee once or twice before. But the fact that she is peeing, and it is presumably a defensive pee, means that she's not happy with me being here. So I think what I'll do is I'll just scoop her up here. I'll give you one quick look at her so you can see that most of that stuff is gone. Most of the stuff on the back is gone. There's a little bit left kind of up on her neck towards her head that we didn't get before she went into defensive mode there. But like I said, it's mostly gone, and we'll call that good for now. And we'll see how she's looking in a couple days. If she gets the rest of that off herself, we don't have to worry about it. Otherwise, we might come back later and check it out. You can see the little present she left for me in there. That white and yellow bit right there is what she passed. So I think I'm going to call that a wrap. Thanks for watching, guys.